At Fidei.email, we believe in protecting your privacy and supporting your faith. Fidei.email offers peace of mind with features like end-to-end encryption and secure communications tools. Your data stays private and your values remain intact. Choose an email provider that understands what matters to you. Make the switch to Fidei.email today.
We've heard rumblings about the Vatican giving us a new theology soon. Why do we need a new theology? Isn't the new theology given to us at Vatican II good enough? Or do we need a new theology every few decades to keep the church relevant? The reasoning behind doing this isn't exactly clear, nor is it clear why the pre-Vatican II theology was insufficient for the Church of Christ. At Vatican II, we got the Nouveau Theologie, the new theology. Why did we need a new theology? Along with that new theology came a new ecclesiology, which is essentially the theology of what the church's mission and relationship to the world is. And from there, we got the excuse, well, you can't have the traditional Mass in the Western Rite anymore because if you have that, it conflicts with the ecclesiology of Vatican II, which is a gigantic red flag for people trying to find a reason to defend Vatican II. But not all that stuff started happening in the 60s and 70s and really got hammered home to us and reminded us by at the hands of Cardinal Roach and others who said you couldn't have your traditional Mass because the ecclesiology of Vatican II was different. But now we have news of another new theology. They're calling it a rapid theology, which will have the church responding rapidly to the needs of the day. What could go wrong? The church famously responds to issues slowly, takes its time slowly. The changes to basic Catholic practices in light of the most seismic change in modern history, the Industrial Revolution, took decades. Things like the fasting rules were loosened up because man was working a little bit differently than he was before the Industrial Revolution. And so they changed the fasting rules for things like Lent and other things that might affect your ability to go do your duty and your responsibilities for your family. It took decades for that. But now they want rapid theology. So we go to Catholic World Report for this headline. Do we need a rapid theology? If the church succumbs to the temptation of opining on concrete policy in contingent political matters in which sincere Catholics can disagree, it risks diluting her moral authority to become just another lobby or non-governmental organization. And that's key here. The church has not yet lost its moral authority due to the evil deeds of some priests and complicit bishops. Transforming the church into an NGO funded mostly by dark money from the US and Germany will certainly do so. You may have heard in the news that they basically shut down a U.S. organization called the U.S. Aid. They give purposes for development and helping charitable causes, a government organization that does this. It turned out that money was being used for a lot of really wicked things. And it turned out that organization was really kind of like the face of some of the snooping organizations of the U.S. government. And the people who are objecting mostly to this being shut down are the ones who are profiting from it directly. And it's worth noting that there are deep ties to the Vatican in this. You begin to have the layers of the onion peeled back. And if you've wondered how it is that the church suddenly started acting more like an NGO, a non-governmental organization in the last several decades, that's points you in the direction of it. I'm tempted to put a FOIA request in for records for that organization pertaining to the Catholic Church. I don't know exactly how to go about doing that, but it'd be something I'd be interested in doing. So if you have an experience with those kind of requests, email me, we'll have a conversation. But here is what this theologian here is warning everybody about this new theology. From the article, quote, "There's a new slogan percolating in the Vatican, Theologia Rapida. Jesuit priest and author Antonio Spadaro, who is Undersecretary for the Vatican's Dicastery for Culture and Education, and the former editor-in-chief of La Civiltà Cattolica, is pushing this new concept, which he thinks is needed because of the church's increasingly radical synodality. As best as I can grasp it, and it seems to be a concept in the making, Theologia Rapida means rapid theological thinking. What exactly does this mean? It seems to mean responding to rapid changes in a rapidly changing world. Spadaro notes that the pace of change in today's world has increased over prior ages and appears to want the church to keep pace. His essay, In This Time of Whirlwind Changes, A Rapid Theology is Needed, takes us on an etymological tour of rapid. Not only is change rapid, but like the rapids of a river, it can shake things up, something both dangerous and exhilarating, and pose special challenges, demanding fast response. My reactions, the author says, are mixed. Yes, the church needs to respond more quickly to the signs and especially the anti signs of the times. A hoary adage says that the church thinks in centuries. Traditionally, it seemed the church could clearly relate to the claim. I don't know if it's apocryphal or not, that when Nixon asked the then premier of China, Zhou Enlai, what he thought of the French Revolution, he answered, too early to tell, 200 years after the fact. Yet, there have been times that the church has been hindered or behind the curve in addressing modern changes in a timely fashion. Because we all know that a favorite refuge of innovators is the claim that if their reform is not immediately uprooted, then we can't turn back the clock. At the same time, a responsible institution like the church should not make precipitous and rushed declarations. The church is not a politician's press spokesman, expected to react to the news of the moment, a news cycle ever more rapid just to get onto CNN. I honestly fear the temptations of the latter. Good moral theology insists that Catholic social teaching largely provides general principles. The framework within the individual policy decisions are made. But between general principles and individual policies, a large number of steps intervene. And as St. Thomas Aquinas was wont to note, the degree of certainty, and therefore of error, between general principle and individual application can increase. End lengthy quote. The church is in the business of giving responses to modern secular problems in terms of general principles to follow in order for people to act morally. In most cases, good people can disagree on different policy positions without their disagreement or their opinion on the matter being a matter of sin. Again, in most cases, obvious exceptions apply to that. But in general, the church doesn't respond rapidly to new social phenomenon because sometimes societal changes are fleeting, or that society develops an opinion that is just on its face insane. And in other cases, the societal changes take time to fully unfold. It would be imprudent for the church to respond quickly to things that are clearly unfolding slowly. A rapid response is often imprudent when we're talking about religious guidelines and input. And here's a great case in point. Laudato Si, Francis's landmark encyclical on care for our common home, which is now horribly out of date, especially in light of the populist political shift happening across the Western world right now. That document is a perfect example of the church rushing to address a perceived problem and going well beyond simple guiding principles, which the author of this article then goes on to show the logic of rapidly responding to these problems. You start to make very serious doctrinal errors if you don't take care in response as an institution. Back to the article, quote, what happens, in fact, is that you run the very real danger of a caricature of co-naturality. That has nothing to do with that concept. It is one which imagines good intentions and some sort of intuitive feelings, perhaps accompanied by a momentary conversation of the spirit, to supply what previously long and cultivated theological inquiry arrived at carefully. Grace builds on nature, but without the careful cultivation of that nature, it is somewhat presumptuous to expect God to replace negligence by inspired intuitions. Spadaro himself speaks of this rapid theology as a process that combines the memory of the church with instinct to transform it into intuition, which is the ability to sense, discern, and quickly evaluate a situation as it develops. The author says, pardon me if I reject what I should have learned from my Jesuit teachers, but I want that process to lead to concepts that are rationally intelligible and prudentially tested, not intuitions that are discerned. Spadaro's flight from such rationality seems evident in his argument that rapid theology ought to be characterized by running without complaining that it has no time to reason, to plan. We certainly haven't seen this Vatican doing that sprint in the case of ex-Jesuit Marco Rupnik. As an editor and communications official, I understand and even sympathize with Spadaro's wish for a more responsive church. But without the spade work that requires, and in the current ecclesiastical climate, I fear what, in fact, that rapid theology may mean in practice. And I dislike slogans. We already went through the field hospital, a paradigm that proved risible when, in the middle of a worldwide affliction, when the church's presence was more necessary than ever, the ecclesiastical mash worldwide struck tent, fled the battlefield, and locked church doors. Talking about the 2020 affliction, ladies and gentlemen. That's why, aware of the inchoate nature of this concept abhorring, I warn against theologia rapida devolving into theologia stupida. Quote. In other words, he warns against a rapid theology turning into a stupid theology, which is the only place it will go. The church will not, as an institution, make good decisions by responding rapidly to a rapidly changing environment. The church's past behavior in this has always been to give a measured response after some time has passed. But that is synodality, folks. That is the nature of the new synodal religion, is to be relevant, to be relevant to a changing world. The only way you can do that is to have a rapid theology. Thoughtfulness goes out the window. Intuition is the rule of the day. This is not a good thing. This is going to lead to a very, very bad place. Key takeaway here is they want to respond rapidly to things and not use proper discernment. A great case in point is what happened down in Peru. Remember that story, don't you? The cardinal who called the police on his own parishioners for praying a rosary as an act of penance outside of his own cathedral, when he was the only voice in the culture who said, no, the blasphemy we all witnessed was fine, when even the secular authorities were like, no, that blasphemy wasn't fine. The cardinal, okay? That's rapid theology. That's what that is. As always, pray for the church and for everybody we spoke about in this today. We are not trying to stir up your anger towards them. Pray for them instead. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.